To really find success in Web3 marketing, you have to deeply understand two things. One is the product that you are marketing, and two is the audience that you're marketing to. In this video, we're going to cover basically how you can go ahead and identify and understand that audience. That will allow you to then go and create messaging and marketing experiences that will truly resonate with them and ultimately hit your goals. So before we get into that, we should probably understand the importance of segmenting and understanding the audience. Well, firstly, as we mentioned, without really understanding who the audience is and segmenting those up into different personas and categories, we don't know who we're speaking to. If we don't know who we're speaking to, it's hard to really tailor our messaging to fit. And in general, a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work when it comes to really specific problems, projects, and products that are filling specific needs. So it's really important that we do understand who we're really speaking to and who this product is really aiming to hit. And especially in the Web3 space, the audiences are so diverse, right? There are many different products, many different people, from validators to developers to end users to investors, and they all have different needs. And there are products that have crossover between a lot of these things. And even within those groups, there are increasingly different subgroups. So by really getting deep into the audiences and segmenting our audiences deeply, we can then go ahead and find messaging that connects on a deeper level and drives more engagement. So what exactly is audience segmentation, and how does this help us understand the audience? Well, what we're really trying to do here is, I guess, partition the audience or segment them and divide them into smaller, more defined categories and groups, right? Based on some shared characteristics or their own set of unique characteristics as well. It's kind of sifting through all the people who could be looking at your project and putting them in their own categories where we can kind of not alienate, but at least identify and then curate messaging and experiences that target them. These groups allow us to customize our marketing. At the end of the day, if we're doing something general, it's hard to hit on a deeper level. So now we know why we need to deeply understand our audience. It brings the question, how do we go about doing that? So there's a process which we call audience segmentation, which is essentially the dividing of your broader audience into smaller, more defined groups or personas based on some shared characteristics, such as problems that they might face, behaviors that they might have, etc. And getting the audience divided into these groups allows us to customize and tailor our marketing and messaging to ensure it resonates with them at the right time. And again, if we're kind of putting out blanket statements about product, about market, yes, it's generally nice because people can understand it, but it doesn't hit deep enough to make people compelled to find out more. And in the Web3 space, where all the stakeholders lie in a huge range, segmentation is the only way to keep messaging and marketing relevant and effective. We really need to hit deep. The market is getting more and more saturated with products, infrastructure, everything that other people are using. There's more and more projects are coming out in even small niche categories. So to really, really hone in our message, we need to deeply understand our audiences, segment them, and understand pretty much everything about them. So what does that look like? Well, let's break it down into some actionable steps. The first is just broad level demographics, right? Was the age, their gender, location, language, occupation, income. These things are pretty generic. You'll find this in any kind of marketing material. We should be asking ourselves, what are the key characteristics of this group? Where are they located? Are they B2C, B2B? What other market types are there? This is just kind of a broad understanding of what this group should be. And again, this helps us kind of identify the high-level patterns and trends within our audience. The second thing is to look at their pains, right? What pain points are they holding that our products can solve, and how can we hit on them? And I think pains can be brought into three kind of categories. One is external pains. So, industry challenges, lack of infrastructure, tools that don't meet their needs. They have these pains of general pains that are not being filled. And this is where your product comes to fill them, more external pains. Second can be internal pains. So this can be stuff like frustrations and insecurities, like, am I falling behind? Am I building the right thing? Is this the right thing to do? Is this really benefiting me? All these kind of internal beliefs that we might be thinking about ourselves and in our situation. And then thirdly, it's philosophical pains. So broader questions like, why isn't this easier? Why isn't there a solution for this? You know, this could be something like if you're talking about, cross-border payments and remittances. Why isn't there a way for me to send money to X, Y, Z? So these are more philosophical worldview pains. Internal pains are more, on a personal level, and external pains are like, hey, I have this problem, I need a solution for it. That's like kind of affecting their life more on an external level. And these micro level pains provide a deeper insight. Breaking these pains into these kind of three different buckets allows us to really open up the space for different messaging that might hit different parts of their the audience's psyche. We might find out if the current solutions are overcomplicated. They might find out they're disappointed in current tooling or current solutions. If there are angles that current, solutions are not kind of hitting that we might be able to hit. Keeping the pains kind of high level, and usually people, what they do is they'll look at the external pains as like the main pain that they're focusing on, which is, that's understandable. But if we can break it down even further, we might be able to find different angles and really create messaging and experiences that resonate deeper with our audience. The more specifically that we can understand their pains, the more we can direct our messaging to address these concerns. And that's the most important thing. Does the audience feel that we understand them enough and we understand their pain enough to be a viable solution, right? It's about understanding at the end of the day. Once we understand their pains deeply enough, we can then move on to the next point, which is identifying their motivations and desires. People both act on pains and on wants and their desires. So we should be asking ourselves, what does the audience truly value, right? How can our product or service help them achieve this desire as well? And again, this can be as generic as, faster, flexibility, X, Y, Z, but we should be trying to get, a bit deeper than that. For example, a retail user might want a one-click, easier onboarding experience, don't have to deal with bridging, etc. And this might come under flexibility and accessibility, but we need to get really into the specifics of what that specific desire is. Just as a developer, they might want a great developer experience, but they might really be focusing on easier access to better documentation, right? So again, this is all in the name of understanding exactly what our audience is looking for, and that will allow us to create messaging that helps them feel understood and excited to engage with the product or your service or your brand. And fourth, we're kind of looking at analyzing their behaviors. So again, understanding the behaviors lets us meet our audience where they are, right? So there's kind of three areas we look here. One is like congregation. So where do they hang out? Are they on Twitter, Discord, Telegram, other niche forums, in real life? Do they work at a bank? Where are they? How can we reach them? And that way we can tailor our marketing and our content for these platforms to make sure that we are not making it difficult for us to find them, for them to find us. Secondly is product related behavior. So do you know how they use similar products? For example, do they rely on specific DApp or a workflow to complete or get around the problem that they're facing at the moment? We need to show them that we understand their unique user experiences and kind of how their life goes about solving these problems, and that we can provide a better solution. Again, we want them to feel heard and understood. And thirdly, on-chain behavior. What does their blockchain activity look like? What do they interact with? What tokens do they hold? What do they trade? Do they engage in governance for specific protocols? All these things are really important, and they can be found. Again, this is all in the name of refining our messaging further, helping us understand the audience and helping them feel that we understand them. And finally, we need to speak directly to the community and core users, right? Everything else above is kind of like frameworked. How do we go about finding our users? How do we go about mapping our personas, etc.? But at the end of the day, if we have users and we have power users that we can talk to, we should ask them. Don't be afraid to just straight up ask, what are your main challenges? What improvements do you want to see? Are we hitting the right problems? Are you still facing problems? This feedback is really, really important because, again, these are people who are using your product. You have found a certain type of individual who is utilizing the product and is getting some benefit from it. So we should be asking them what we're missing. This is really important. And, we can ask them all the questions above if you really wanted. But sometimes, people don't know the answers to the above because you don't think about it too deeply. It's our job to kind of uncover that. But again, getting this feedback helps us align our marketing with their needs and expectations, and also product side as well. So that's kind of how we can go about segmenting our audience. But then what do we do with that information? Well, we need to go about creating personas. So what is a persona? It's basically a kind of fictional profile that represents our different audience segments. And this way we can just understand and have like a visual representation of, okay, here is X person, they have these problems and these traits, and this is how we're going to target our messaging towards them. So again, identifying the types of people who are currently engaging with your product or your community, or the people who you ideally want to create, which I think is down below, so I won't get into that. But again, what are their common traits? What are their problems? What are they facing? For example, is it a persona A, the developer using your tooling, or a retail investor drawn by high APY for returns and stuff like that? So yeah, figuring out who our current personas are is important, and then we can move on to figuring out who our ideal personas are, because there might be a crossover and there might be a discord between these two people, right? So then we need to define what our ideal audience wants. What are their pains, their desires, their behaviors? What characteristics do they have? And that way, we can go and figure out who they are. And here, for example, persona 3 could be a high-value institutional partner looking to deploy capital into the Web3 space. So what we've done now is we've understand who is currently using our protocol, and this is basically a reflection of what our current marketing is attracting, and who is this ideal person that we're looking to attract. And we can look at the differences and then understand, okay, based on this, we can kind of change our messaging here and there, and the marketing that we provide here and there, and everything else tactically and strategically around that. So the key elements of a persona, obviously, demographics, pains, desires, behaviors. All right, getting these personas allows us to personalize our messages and marketing efforts, making them a lot more effective and cutting a lot deeper. We want to really, really hone this. This is really important. The sharper the message, the deeper the cut. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So to summarize, audience segmentation is the foundation of effective marketing. If you do not understand your audience, it's going to be very, very hard for you to curate messaging, experiences, swag, all this kind of stuff will fall short if you really don't understand what your audience is looking for and who they are. So again, understand your audience, their pains, their desires, their behaviors, and then craft messaging that resonates deeply with that. Create personas, ensure that the content speaks directly to the current and ideal personas, and where we can kind of ideally close the gap between them, we should. And finally, again, generic messaging gets lost, but a tailored message drives engagement, builds trust, and ultimately shows them that you understand them, which leads to conversions. So I hope this video was valuable. And if you ever need some support in kind of getting this audience segmentation down, I do have a guide that will link in the description. But again, this is a really, really important part of your marketing, right? Without understanding your audience, without understanding your product, everything else is really hard to, you're just throwing darts at the board with a blindfold on, right? So really get to understand your audience, know who they are, current and ideal, and then you can work towards kind of curating messaging and experiences and your brand towards those people. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, a comment, and a sub, and feel free to share it with any friends that you might have who might enjoy this content. And I'll see you in the next video.